Hi, welcome to the ACCA F5. I'm Hafeez and I'm going to take you through to the ACCA paper F5. Let's start. In this session, we are going to talk about absorption costing and activity-based costing. Absorption costing and activity-based costing are two cost accumulation methods. Cost accumulation means whether we are working for a production organization, manufacturing, or we are working for a service-based organization. We manufacture goods and we produce services. So when a product or a service is produced, we need to know the value of the product or a service. Meaning, how much money have we spent to produce this product, or how much money we have incurred to generate this service. First method or cost accounting method is absorption costing. Any product is made up of three main components. When I say three main components, I'm sure you got my idea already. I'm talking about a manufacturing physical product. For example, a computer, a TV, a chair, a car, etc. Any product is made up of three basic components: direct materials, direct labor, and production overheads. I'm sure you have understood this idea in your previous paper of management accounting, which was paper F2. So here is a little reminder that as per absorption costing, in order to calculate full or total cost of production of one unit, we need to find out how much material has been used in one unit, how much labor cost has been applied to one unit, and how much of production overheads were charged to one unit of product. It is not difficult to calculate the cost of direct materials and direct labor. Direct materials, all you need to know is a couple of things. Number one, you need to know the usage of direct materials, meaning kilos, meters, liters, etc. And secondly, the price of those meters, liters, and kilos. So quantity multiplied by price, you will get the cost of direct materials in one unit. Direct labor is also very straightforward to work out. All you need to know is the time, how long did we take to produce this product, and what was the rate per hour we are paying to the workforce. So the time multiplied by the hourly rate, we get the cost of direct labor. So in ACCA exams, it is very, very straightforward. When it comes to the production overheads, then we use two methods, okay, one of the two. First method you have studied in paper F2, as I was talking about, which was absorption costing. As per absorption costing, production overheads are charged to the products, to the manufactured goods, on the basis of overhead absorption rate, okay, which is the formula you can see here. Overhead absorption rate is based upon this formula, which is budgeted overhead cost for a period divided by budgeted level of activity for a period. Now, when we say budgeted overhead cost, it simply means overheads are of various types. Generally, overheads are bills or period costs. Okay, for example, rent, rates, utilities, repair and maintenance, depreciation, supervision cost, factory rates or rent, etc. These are all, some heating, lighting, electricity, these are all overheads. So right at the beginning of the year, we work out the estimate of the overheads for the whole year, whole period. And then at the same time, we work out budgeted level of activity for a whole period. So in your previous paper F2, you've seen it. Otherwise, you can see a number of type of activities can be used to charge overheads or to calculate overhead absorption rate. Most popular are direct labor hours or machine hours. Okay, we can use either number of labor hours as the budgeted level of activity, or we can use machine hours as the budgeted level of activity, or we can use number of units as well if you like. So budgeted overheads divided by budgeted number of units. Okay, now you might have noticed from this formula of the absorption costing, overhead absorption rate, budgeted overheads divided by budgeted level of activity. This is a traditional system of costing. Why traditional? Because you have applied this in your real life as well. Many of you might have applied this in real life. This is a system of sharing. When we say sharing, it's like this. If 2 or 3 friends are living in a shared property, so the bills of that property divided by 2 or 3 people, and we can work out the bills per person. Or rent of the property divided by 2 or 3 people living in that property, we can share the rent as well. This is exactly what I'm talking about relating to this overhead absorption rate. Okay, 2 friends share a taxi or a cab from A to B. So whatever the fare works out divided by 2 people, and that's simply overhead absorption rate. Okay, so this is the most traditional technique accountants have applied in absorption costing, which is let's share the overheads over the volume of activity. And as I said, depending upon the choice of the accountants, volume of activity can be number of machine hours, number of labor hours, or number of units. Or sometimes when the labor or machine hour detail is not known to us, okay, what we can do is we can use the percentage of sales revenue as well. That if product has got higher sales revenue, that should carry higher value of overheads, and if a product has a lower sales revenue, we can charge lower value of overheads to the product as well. So again, choice. But remember, in one exam question, we only apply one level of activity, not all of them at the same time. Okay. Based upon this overhead absorption rate, we can calculate very easily how much of overheads should be charged to 1 unit of A, 1 unit of B, 1 unit of C. Okay, so here is a quick reminder about absorption costing. Absorption costing is a system of full costing of a product, and full costing includes direct materials number 1, direct labor number 2, and production overheads. Production overheads can be calculated by using overhead absorption rate, and then cost of a product is calculated. With the help of this cost per unit, we can work out selling price as well. Okay, cost plus profit equals to selling price, and we can price our products. So generally the companies which have got very little number of product lines, 1, 2, 3 single product lines, or maybe 2 or 3, companies feel comfortable to apply absorption costing. They're quite okay to apply absorption costing. Absorption costing method can work quite well for small organizations which have very limited operations, and the organizations which do not have production complexity. Most of the jobs are done by the human hands, or maybe a little equipment or tools are used. Okay, production is straightforward. It's been used for years and years and years, and it's still in application for more than 85% of the companies in the world. Okay, absorption costing is the most used method of cost accounting. Okay, now let's have a look at the second method, which is the activity based costing. Okay, activity based costing, or ABC. Activity, first of all, before I talk about what activity based costing is, let's have a look at why did we need activity based costing. Okay, before actually I'll go into much details and then question solving and number crunching and practice, okay, a little bit of idea. Please remember, any product is made up of 3 components. So here is the absorption costing and activity based costing. So any product is made up of 3 components, whether it is absorption or ABC. First component is materials or direct materials. Second is labor or direct labor, if you like to call it. And thirdly, production overheads. Now here is, before I start ABC, under absorption costing and ABC, activity-based costing, both materials and labor are calculated likewise in a simple, identical way. There is no difference in calculation between absorption and ABC when it comes to the cost of materials and labor. In both absorption and ABC, materials quantity times price, labor time multiplied by the rate. Okay? When it comes to the production overheads, then both techniques work in a different way. Okay? Then both techniques work in a different way. For example, when it is absorption costing, then overheads are charged using one overhead absorption rate. We use only one overhead absorption rate, the formula which I have shown you. Budgeted overheads divided by budgeted labor hours, or budgeted overheads divided by budgeted number of units, or budgeted overheads divided by budgeted machine hours or labor hours, whatever is given in the question. One overhead absorption rate is used to charge overheads to each product. But when it comes to the ABC, activity-based costing, then we don't use one overhead absorption rate. Then production overheads are charged to the products by different method. Okay, and this different method we are going to talk about, which is based upon various activities, as the method name is activity-based costing. Then we use a costing system which is based upon activities. A costing system based upon activities. So let's have a look at the details of the activity-based costing. Right, so very recently, about 20-25 years ago, the accountants or the managers of the companies, they noticed that sometime absorption costing misleads the results. Misleading results is simply this, that in a number of cases when we use one overhead absorption rate, for example labor hours, a number of people argue, when you use the formula over budgeted overheads divided by budgeted labor hours, what's the logic behind it? And a number of times we are confused because we can't find any logic. Why not? Simply because if you look at the formula, if I take you back to the formula, okay, budgeted overheads divided by budgeted level of activity. Overhead is a sum of various indirect costs like rent, rate, electricity, power, heating, lighting, insurance, maintenance, cafeteria and canteen, safety and security, etc. What is the relationship between overheads and the labor hours? I mean to say, do we pay the rent overhead based upon number of hours? Do we spend money on cafeteria cost on the basis of number of hours? Do we spend money on CCTV cameras or factory security on the basis of number of hours? Do we spend the money on heating and lighting on the basis of number of hours? And the answer is, or insurances on the basis of number of hours? And the answer is no, actually. We pay insurance for a period. We pay rent for a period. We pay for a number of other bills for a period, 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, etc. So a number of people believe that there is no direct relationship between the overheads and the working hours. And sometimes when we apply this guesswork, guess means that we are guessing there is a relationship between overheads and the number of labor hours or machine hours. When we apply this guesswork, a number of times our cost is inappropriate or misleading. So when the organizations were simple, small and less competitive, less competition in the society, then we used to get away with it. We could have applied absorption costing as well, because overheads were small, product lines were little, so the method was working somehow. But over the last 25 years or so, we noticed that as we are entering the new world, okay, Many companies or competitors are in the market. Companies are producing many products. There is a huge production complexity, and absorption costing in some organizations wasn't giving us the right value of cost. So then we started looking into the activity-based costing. So activity-based costing was started when we felt that there was higher level of production complexity in the manufacturing process, meaning some of the production jobs are done by the human hours, labor hours, some of the jobs are done by the machine hours, some of the jobs are done by the robotics technology, and some jobs are even outsourced as well. So when we set up overhead absorption rate, question arises, which hours shall we use in this formula? Should we use labor hours? Oh no, there are machine hours as well. Oh, so shall we use machine hours? Oh no, there are some robots lying in there as well. So they will get upset if we don't use the robotic hours. Okay, what about the outsourcing? So a number of times it was misleading due to increased production complexity. Second reason was that increased proportion of overhead cost. Okay, as I said, remember my word guesswork. So when we guess that there is some sort of relationship between overhead cost and the labor or machine hours, we are assuming that because overheads are small, okay, so even if the guess is wrong, my calculation is not that much wrong. As per a study done by one of the professional institutes a couple of years ago, they identified some of the statistics over the last 50 years, that about 50 years ago, production was very simple, production was very small, and the proportion of overhead cost in one unit was approximately 5 to 6%. So if we were spending $100 on a product, only $5 or $6 were coming from the overheads. But recently, in the last few years, I'm talking about 2000 onwards, the proportion of overhead cost in a product has gone massively higher. So if nowadays an average company is spending $100 on a product, approximately 35% plus $35 or more come from the overheads. So in the past, many years ago, if my calculation or my guess was slightly wrong, I was not wrong that much because overheads were very small. But nowadays, if my guess is wrong, my cost will be utterly wrong and my price may not be appropriate and I may lose the market. So I have got to be slightly more accurate in my costing. Okay, and that was the reason activity-based costing was starting to develop. Okay, now let's have a look at how this system works. ABC analysis. Okay, best way to remember activity-based costing is if you read the ABC the other way around. It is a costing system which is based upon activities. It is a costing system based upon activities. Activity-based costing is not a system of totality. Totality means under the absorption costing, we assume that all production takes place under one roof. That's why we use one overhead absorption rate, whether labor hours or machine hours, but we use labor hours or machine hours of the whole company. Okay, right? Not one by one activity. But under the activity-based costing, we do not calculate the overheads for the organization. We cost the overheads of each activity as a separate organization. So under the activity-based costing, each activity is like a small organization in its own right. So it is activity-based costing. So overheads of each activity will be calculated separately. And then later on, we can merge them up together for a product. Okay, right? In activity-based costing, here are some of the calculation steps which generally examiners are interested about, whether it's section A or section B. We are interested to find out cost drivers for each cost pool. Cost pool is the overhead cost of each product. Okay, so please remember, I'm sure you are familiar with the terminologies, but in case, cost pool simply represents overhead of each activity. Okay, so we need to calculate the cost drivers for each activity. We will explain in a minute, okay? And secondly, we can be asked to calculate cost per unit using activity-based approach, okay? Depending upon section A or section B, because in section A, examiners cannot ask everything in one question of 2 marks. So generally, they may ask you calculate the cost driver rate, or they may give us so much of information, and they may ask us to link this up to a product, calculate the cost per unit using ABC when plenty of information is already sorted out, okay? But a full system of activity-based costing, which generally comes up in section B, which are longer questions, 10 to 15 marks, and then we are asked to discuss a number of steps or to calculate a number of steps. So here is a full system of activity-based costing. Within the organization, activity-based costing starts with breaking down the production process into various activities. Okay, we break down the whole production process into small activities or small functions, or if you fancy, call them mini departments. Okay, now there are a number of activities which we can imagine. Okay, so very quickly I can write down here for you, okay, just a few activities as an example. So organization can be divided into a number of activities. For example, resource acquisition. Okay, for example, purchasing department comes under the resource acquisition. In order to produce any physical product, we need raw materials. And in order to buy raw materials, we have a separate purchasing department. Okay. So for example, purchasing. Or in manufacturing, you can imagine cutting. Okay, chopping different elements of a product, wood, plastic, metal, steel, etc. Cutting department. Or it can be finishing. Or it can be assembly. Okay, or it could be warehousing, okay, packaging, quality control, so we can divide the production process into a number of mini departments, mini functions or activities. And activity-based costing is a costing system of each activity individually. Okay, overhead of each activity will be calculated itself, nothing to do with other activities. Okay, so one activity is considered as a small organization in its own right. Okay, I just listed a few activities for a large organization. Okay, multi-billion-dollar worth of organization. There can be 50 activities, 40 activities, hundreds of activities. Okay, just a few. In exam, you may only be given 2 or maximum 3 activities, not much, because of the time constraints. Okay, now let's proceed further. So first of all, we break down the production process into various activities the product passes through. Number 2, we determine cost driver for each activity. We determine cost driver for each activity. Now, cost driver is simply a reason or a factor or a base which generates the overhead cost. So it is any factor within the activity which can trigger the overhead cost, meaning which can increase the overhead cost of that activity, and that factor can decrease the overhead cost of that activity. Okay, here is couple of examples and we will move on. For example, if you look at a number of activities, purchasing, the first one. Okay, you would appreciate if we have a purchasing department, okay, where there is a purchasing manager, there are purchasing assistants and so many people working in the purchasing department. They have maybe many functions, but main responsibility is to buy raw materials. So when we are talking about purchasing department, okay, purchasing department is responsible to purchase raw materials. When they purchase raw materials, there are a number of administrative jobs they have to do. For example, now first of all, they need to find out the right supplier, searching around. Once they find the suppliers, they need to vet the suppliers, they need to shortlist the suppliers, they need to contact the suppliers, whether they are provider of the right material or not. Then they start negotiating with the suppliers. Once they choose one supplier, then they place the purchase order. How purchase order is placed, I don't know, I'm not the purchasing expert, probably over the phone, or by sending a purchase order by post, or by dropping an email to the supplier that I need these type of materials, these price, that's the dates, and that's the delivery point, okay, and other terms and conditions. And then purchasing department receives the delivery, shipment, and then loading, offloading, and the material goes into the warehouse, etc. Okay, after inspecting the material, if it's right or something, then it goes into the warehouse. Now these are so many administrative jobs purchasing department has to do. Question arises is this: if there are a couple of strategies in front of the purchasing department, okay, what can be an appropriate cost driver for the purchasing department? So my idea is, for example, purchasing department needs to buy 1000 kilos. Okay, I'm just assuming that purchasing department is looking to buy 1000 kilos. One strategy is they can buy all 1000 kilos in one purchase order, one PO, one purchase order. They can buy all 1000 kilos in one go, meaning contact the supplier once, exchange communication once, receive the delivery or shipment once, do the inspection once, and transfer them to the warehouse once. Okay? Or a second strategy can be, instead of buying all 1000 kilos in one purchase order, a number of people do not buy in bulk. They may buy 1000 kilos in 10 purchase orders of 100 kilos, 100 kilos, 100 kilos. Again, I'm not talking about whether buying in bulk one purchase order is good and buying in 10 purchase orders is bad. I'm not judging, okay, which one is better for the company. My idea is to develop a cost driver for the purchasing overheads. Okay, if we will buy 1000 kilos in 10 purchase orders, do we not need to contact the supplier 10 times? Do we not to exchange the communication or information 10 times? Do we not need to raise invoices 10 times or get the invoices 10 times? And do we not to get the material delivery 10 times, inspection 10 times, and transferring to the warehouse 10 times? My question is this: what do you think? Buying in one purchase order involves a lot of hassle, or buying in 10 purchase orders increases the administrative job? What do you think? I'm waiting for your answers. Oh, right, okay, yes, you are shouting back at me. Oh, come on. It is a lot more easier to purchase all materials in one go. And if we will place 10 purchase orders, we will have to go through the same exercise 10 times. Okay, telephone cost 10 times, shipment cost 10 times, inspection 10 times, etc. So administrative hassle or administrative job increases more if we place more purchase orders. So here, can I not define purchase orders as an appropriate cost driver? This is how management and the accountants, they sit down together and they develop the cost drivers, that which factor is actually changing the cost, overhead cost. So if we can control the cost driver somehow, we can control the cost, meaning if we change the number of purchase orders, the overhead cost will change. Okay, more the purchase orders, more the overhead cost, less the purchase orders, less the overhead cost. Okay, I can give you a number of examples, but I think now you got my point. So when you will be reading the books, things will start getting better. Okay, so let's move on. Here are some examples given, okay, for some cost pools or activities. For material handling, number of orders can be used. Okay, material ordering, material handling, quantity of material can be used. Production scheduling, number of production runs, or sometimes instead of runs, we may be given number of batches. Okay, again, depending upon whether examiner wants to call it number of production runs or number of production batches, or sometime examiner can give us another synonym of the same run or batches, which can be setups, depending upon the information provided. Cost dispatching can be based upon number of deliveries, more number of dispatches, more number of deliveries, etc. Okay, once we know, and one good thing is that you are clearly given in each question, okay, what are the cost drivers. So you don't need to imagine an exam question about these cost drivers. This was just additional information if you need to discuss or explain things, so at least you know what I'm talking about. Okay, but for calculation point of view, you don't need to worry about. You will be given the production process broken down into activities. Activities will be given to you. Cost drivers will be given to you in the exams. Okay, what you need to do is now here from step number 3. Okay, here is calculate the cost driver rate for each activity. Okay, now cost driver rate is number of formulae we develop for activity based costing. It is very similar to overhead absorption rate. The only difference is one overhead absorption rate is calculated for one organization, whereas number of cost driver rates can be calculated based upon number of activities. So if we have 5 activities within organization, we will calculate 5 cost driver rates. If we have 20 activities of a production process, we will be calculating 20 cost driver rates. Okay, so for each activity, we will calculate a separate cost driver rate. So formula of the cost driver rate can be like this. It's very similar to overhead absorption rate. Okay, only difference is many overhead absorption rates we need to develop relating to each activity. So here is cost driver rate formula. Okay, for each activity, overhead cost, now please remember, overhead cost of each activity is always given for a period of 1 month, 1 quarter, or generally 1 year. Okay, so overhead cost of each activity for the period in question divided by total number of drivers selected for a period. Meaning to say, I'm just assuming, if for example I was talking about the purchasing department, so the cost driver rate for a purchasing department will be overhead cost of the purchasing activity divided by total number of purchase orders for the period. Okay, so for each activity we need to select one driver. For purchasing, it can be number of purchase orders. For material handling, it could be quantity of materials. For ordering, it can be number of orders, etc. Okay, so overhead cost of purchasing activity divided by total number of drivers which are purchase orders for this activity. One thing sometimes examiners confuse in the exams, which is not too difficult, which is that they don't give us the drivers for a period. They may give us purchase orders for each product separately, okay, or they may give us purchase orders for each batch separately. You must make sure one thing before you set up this formula. If the purchase orders are given for each product, if the drivers are given for each product, please calculate the total number of purchase orders or total number of inspections or total number of runs or total number of the driver for a period. Okay, and then afterwards you can calculate this rate. Make sure that has to be total number of the driver for a period, because the overhead cost is given for the period. Once we have calculated this, now we can link this rate up with every product, okay, on the basis of consumption or usage. Meaning, if any product has more purchase orders, it will carry more share of the overhead. If any product has less number of drivers, it will carry less share of the overhead. So link the cost driver rates of each activity to each product on consumption or usage basis. So more driver consumption in a product, more overhead cost in a product. Okay, so this was the basic idea of the activity based costing. Now let's do little practice. Okay, before we do the practice, again, as I was explaining before, cost per unit will always be based upon three elements: direct materials, direct labor, based upon the same method. Okay, there is no difference between absorption and activity based. When it comes to the overhead cost, then yes, we can be choosing activity based or absorption costing, but we will see it in a question. Okay, here we go. Right, you can see a very typical section B type question on absorption and activity based costing. Okay, right. Hansau Limited has a single production process for which the following overhead costs have been estimated for the period ending 31st of December 2014. So following overhead costs, following are the overhead costs which have been estimated for the period. Okay, not for individual product but for the whole period. They given us material receipts and inspection, power cost and material handling cost. Afterwards, three products X, Y and Z are produced by workers who perform a number of operations on the material blanks using handheld electrically powered drills. The workers are paid $4 per hour. So this is something, an important information. Why? Because I think when I will calculate the cost of labor, I may need this hourly rate. They get paid $4 per hour. Okay. The following budgeted information has been obtained for the period ending 31st of December. So some more details about the products. Okay. There are three products X, Y and Z. And they given us the details: production quantity in units, how many units we are going to produce, batches of material, how many batches of materials we will get for X, Y and Z, and then they given us data per product unit. Okay, meaning now onwards any information below in this table relates to 1 unit of X, 1 unit of Y and 1 unit of Z. Okay, meaning how much direct material square meters in 1 XYZ, direct material cost in 1 XYZ in dollars, and then direct labor in minutes and number of power drill operations in 1 X, Y and Z. At present, the company absorbs all overhead costs. By the way, before I move on, I think with the help of this information, I can easily calculate cost of direct materials and direct labor. Whether it's absorption or ABC, it will remain the same. labor information is given, material information is given. Soon as I will start calculating, you will see, okay, that I will use the same values for absorption and ABC when it comes to materials and labor cost. Okay, right. At present, the company absorbs all overhead costs into the products using labor hours absorption costing. So this is their current system of costing. An activity-based costing investigation has revealed that the cost drivers for the overhead costs are as follows. So now we are given for each overhead activity their own selected cost drivers. Okay, meaning for material receipt and inspection, we will use the driver as number of batches. For process power, we will use number of power drill operations, and for material handling, we will use quantity of materials handled. So for absorption costing, only one overhead absorption rate, but for activity based costing, 3 cost driver rates, because there are 3 activities. Okay, so please keep on watching it. Now here are the requirements. Okay, so it is a section B question, longer question, okay, which is, I suppose this should be around 15 marks minimum. Okay, requirement: calculate the product cost per unit, 1 unit cost for each XYZ, detailing the unit cost of each cost element. Number 1, using the existing method for the absorption of overhead cost, and number 2, an approach which recognizes the cost drivers revealed in the ABC investigation. Okay, so requirement 1 is absorption, requirement 2 is ABC. Let's set up the answer plans, and then we will pick up the information from this example, hence how limited, and then we will be dealing it one by one. So here we go. Requirement 1 is absorption costing cost per unit. And because there are 3 products, so I think it would be much more convenient if I can set up 3 columns, 1 for each product. Okay, X, Y, and Z. So for example, this is for X, that's for Y, and that's for Z. And numbers are in dollars, so I can just list down dollar signs once so that I don't need to repeat this in the exams. Now there are 3 cost elements. 1 is direct materials, second is direct labor, and third is production overheads. Okay, production overheads. Now here is for the activity based costing, requirement 2. So this is the answer plan for the activity based costing. ABC cost per unit. Okay, again ABC is making the same thing, X, Y, and Z. So there are 3 products, X, Y, and Z. Again numbers are in dollars. Okay, and again there are 3 elements: materials, labor, and overheads. Okay, right. First of all, let's deal with materials, labor, and then overheads. Okay, here is the information about materials. So if I just remove all other details and focus on what is the first cost, which is materials, I'm given here data per product unit. Here is the direct material cost information. There are 2 informations given: direct material square meters, and secondly direct material cost. Now please tell me, for 1 unit of X, what is the cost of materials in 1x? I'll wait for 10 seconds. What is the cost of direct materials for 1 unit of x? Oh, okay. What about some other people? Oh, right, okay. Now, I heard a couple of answers from you. Some people are saying the cost of materials in 1x is $5, and some people are saying the cost of materials in 1x is $20. Let's analyze both the answers. Those people who are calculating $20, they are assuming something. Assuming is this: they are multiplying 4 by 5 to get 20. What they are assuming is this: they are assuming that examiner's data is not complete and they are adding some of the information themselves. Okay, this is what they are adding. Direct material cost in dollars, was it like this? If I was given information like this, then 4 times 5 was perfectly justified. I was not given direct material cost in dollars per square meter. If I was given per square meter, then 5 per square meter times by 4 meters, 20. But I was not given, my brain assumed something. So one thing please, in exams, especially for ACCA F5, okay, try not to apply assumptions, okay. Without assumptions you can pass it quite comfortably. Without even any assumptions you can pass it quite comfortably, okay. So try not to apply assumptions. Imagine details are correct, okay. I was already given direct material cost in 1x in dollars, that 1x costs $5 in materials, 1y $3 in materials, and 1z $6 in materials. So 5, 3 and 6. Okay, understood? Here is the direct labor. Now I can highlight information about direct labor. One information was here: workers are paid $4 per hour, and direct labor time was given in minutes. So you got to be careful here. We are not given the time of X, Y and Z in hours. We are given time of X, Y, Z in minutes, 24, 40 and 60. So it's not much difficult. Rate is $4 per hour. We just need, for X it will be times by 24 over 60 because there are 60 minutes in an hour. For Y it will be 40 over 60, and for Z it will be 60 over 60. Okay, so here is my calculator. 4 times 24 over 60, labor cost in 1x is 160. 4 times 40 divided by 60, which is 267 approximately, and 4 times 60 over 60 is 4. Labor cost is calculated. Okay, now we are looking at the production overheads. And remember, under absorption costing, we apply overhead absorption rate, one overhead absorption rate, and in the question it was saying based upon labor hours. Okay, so first of all, here is the formula for the production overhead absorption rate. Overhead absorption rate equals to total budgeted overhead cost for 2014, year given is, period is 2014, divided by total budgeted Because why budgeted? Because overhead absorption rate is established at the beginning of the year when the budgets are there only. We don't have actual results. So budgeted information is used. So total budgeted overhead cost for the 2014 and total budgeted labor hours. Just need to double check labor or machine hours. Yes, using labor hours. For 2014. Okay, now let's pick the numbers one by one. First of all, the top or numerator, budgeted overhead cost. Overhead cost is given here. Okay, in the very first paragraph, we just need to add them together. 15,600, 19,500 and 13,650, in total 48,750. Okay, in total $48,750. Is that okay? Remember, in absorption costing, we believe in total results for the organization, not individual activities. Okay. Second is the labor hours. We are not given labor hours for the period 2014. We are only given time for 1x, 1y, 1z, and here we go. If we are given time of 1x, 1y, 1z, we can easily determine total time for x, y and z, all products for 2014, and labor hours will be done. So here we go, 24, 40 and 60. Labor hours will be 24, 40 and 60 for each product, multiplied by 2,000, 1,500 and 800, and we will get total hours, budgeted hours, labor hours for the 2014. Okay, so 20, oh, by the way, because the time is given in minutes, so please don't forget to divide it by 60. Because it's not in hours, it's in minutes, and we need in hours. Okay, so that's why divided by 60. So 24 into 2000 divided by 60, that comes to 800. 40 times by 1500 divided by 60, which is 1000. And then 60 into 800 divided by 60. Sometimes we become stupid like, I become stupid like this. I know 60 times 800 over 60 will give me 800 anyway. And in total 2600. So use calculators whenever you really need to use. Otherwise, some simple calculations you can do it manually. But just in case, make sure don't make a mistake. Okay, now here is the both informations sorted out. So OAR will be like this: 48,750 total overheads, got it from the question, okay, divided by 2,600 hours. And here is the overhead absorption rate per hour for 1 hour. So 48,750 divided by 2,600, it gives me 18.75 per hour. 18.75 for 1 labor hour. And now I can link this rate, because this is not for 1 unit of XYZ. This is 18.75 per hour, meaning when 1X, 1Y or 1Z remains in processing for 1 full hour, overhead cost is 18.75. But if any product remains in processing for less than 1 hour, overhead cost will be less than 18.75. And if any product remains in processing for more than 1 hour, overhead cost will be more than 18.75. So here is final linking up the production overheads, okay, which is 18.75 2475 times 24, 40 and 60 divided by 60, just like labor. Okay, right? So here we go. 1875 into 24 over 60, which is 7.5. Second one is 1875 into 40 over 60, which is 1250. And finally, because Z is processed for 1 full hour, so overhead cost will be full 18.75. And that gives us full or total cost per unit for each product X, Y, and Z. Let's add them together for each product. 5 plus 160 plus 750, 1410. Okay, I remember these answers, but I'm just doing it the way you will be doing it in exams. So that's why I'm using calculator right in front of you, just like a human effort in actual exam. Sometimes I make mistakes, maybe purposely sometimes, okay? But this is how we do it, okay? I'm not just copying and pasting ready-made answers, okay? So please do it the way we are doing it, just like in actual exams. So 3 plus 267 plus 1250, 18.17, and finally 28.75. That's full cost of 1x, 1y, 1z using absorption costing. Okay, now let's do the activity based costing. Here is the ABC cost per unit, full cost per unit. Again, please remember, as far as materials and labor are concerned, that will just be copy and paste. So 5, 3 and 6. No problem with that. Labor cost, copy and paste, 160, 267. And 4. And when it comes to the overheads, instead of one overhead absorption rate, we will calculate overhead for each activity separately. And remember, there were 3 activities given to us: material receipt and inspection, material handling, and secondly, power. And thirdly, material handling. Okay. Now, what we do is, first of all, we develop cost driver rates. Okay. Now, very quickly, let's have a look at the cost drivers. We are told right at the end of the question that there are 3 cost drivers, one for each activity: number of batches for the material receipts, number of power drill operations for the process power, and material handling for the quantity of material in square meters. Is it okay? Now let's do it one by one. First of all, material receipt and inspection. Material receipt and inspection cost is 15,600. Okay, divided by number of batches of materials. So material receipt and inspection cost divided by number of batches of material, that will give us the cost driver rate. And here are the number of batches of materials: 10, 5 and 16. Okay, so cost driver rate, if I show you on a separate page, that will help you to understand, okay, in a better way. So here are cost driver rates. Okay, first of all, material receipt and inspection. Okay, cost is 15,600 divided by number of batches. Examiner told us number of batches to be used, okay, so which are 10, 5 and 16. Okay, or if you fancy add them up, which is 31, and that works out the material receipt and inspection cost per batch. So 15,600 divided by 31, we get approximately, you can see on the screen, 503.23. $503.23 per batch. This is the first cost driver rate. Okay, $503.23 when one batch is received and inspected. Okay, but we are not just interested to know cost of material receipt per batch. We are interested to know how much of this goes into 1X, 1Y, 1Z. So we need to know proportionate cost of this material receipt and inspection in 1X, 1Y, 1Z, which is very simple. All we need to do is this, that we need 10 batches for X in a year, and there are 2,000 units of X produced out of 10 batches. Okay, so all we need to do is take this rate here, okay, 503.23, and for the product X multiplied by 10 divided by 2,000 units, and we will get the receipt and inspection cost of 1X. Okay, so 503.23 times by 10, 503.23 times by 10 divided by 2,000, which gives me 0.03, or I can double check this one. Okay, 503.23 times by 10 divided by 2,000, which is 2.52. Okay, sorry, that was a little mistake. 2.52 approximately receipt and inspection overhead in 1X. Now exactly the same way for the product Y. Okay, how many batches are used for Y? 5. So multiplied by 5 batches divided by 1,500 units. Okay, so idea is use the total drivers as a denominator first, and then multiply back by the same number of driver for each product, consumption basis. Okay, so let me repeat it. In order to calculate the cost driver rate, total overhead cost of one activity divided by total of the driver selected for that activity, that is cost driver rate. Then link that rate to each product. How? Multiply that back by the same denominator for each product. Okay, meaning to say the same individual denominators represent consumption of receipt and inspection cost for 1X, 1Y, 1Z. Okay, so use them in total as a denominator, and then use them in the next step as a multiplier for each product one by one. Okay, so second one is 503.23 times by 5 divided by 1,500, which comes to 1.68 approximately. And thirdly, 503.23 into number of batches are 16 into 16 divided by 800, which is 10.06. That's the material receipt and inspection overhead in 1X, 1Y, 1Z. Did you notice something before I look into power and material handling? Remember how I was defining and developing the cost drivers. Cost drivers are the bases or factors which become the reason to generate overhead, which trigger the overhead, which control the overhead cost, meaning more the driver number, more the overhead cost, less the driver number, less the overhead cost. So if management wants to control or reduce the receipt and inspection cost, they must need to reduce the number of batches by putting more units in one batch. And if they will get less number of batches, they will have less value of overhead in each product. Okay. Second is process power. Process power cost is 19,500. That should be based upon number of power drill operations. And here are power drill operations. Okay, the only thing is these are power drill operations per unit, because this data, all this data below is per unit. So 6 drill operations for 1X, 3 drill operations for 1Y, and 2 drill operations for 1Z. And if we multiply them by 2,000, 1,500 and 800 respectively, we will get total number of drill operations. So let's do the same thing again. First of all, cost driver rate, process power. Okay, which is $19,500 divided by total number of power drill operations. And for each product, we are given only individual power drill operations, 6, 3 and 2. X, Y and Z one by one. There are 2,000 units of X. So 12,000 operations in a year times by 1,500 units for Y. So 4,500 operations for Y, and times by 800 units, we will get 1,600 operations for Z. And if we add them together, 12,000 plus 4,500 plus 1,600, it's 18,100. Process power, 19,500 divided by 18,100 operations, we will get power cost per operation. So here we go, 19,500 divided by that, which is 1.08 approximately. Per operation. Then when one drill operation is performed, power cost is 1.08. Now let's link this rate to 1X, 1Z, Y and 1Z. Okay, so here we go. Process power. 1.08 multiplied by, remember the individual power operations 6, 3 and 2. So for the product X, it will be times by 6. For the Y, times by 3. And for Z, times by 2. So 6 times by 1.08, 648 I think. Okay, I suppose. Then 3 times by that, which is 324 and 216. And did you get the same logic here as well? Same logic of cost drivers inherent in the activity based costing, that more number of drivers means more cost, lower the number of drivers means lower the cost. And if management is interested to control the cost, they need to investigate how can they control the drill operations of each product. Last one is material handling, same principle. Material handling cost is 13,650. So first of all, the driver rate or overhead absorption rate for the material handling. and it is based upon quantity of material in square meters handled, and quantity of materials is given here 4 meters, 6 meters and 3 meters, but that's again per unit. 4 meters in 1x, 6 meters in 1y and 3 meters in 1z, whereas 13,650 is given for the whole 2014. Okay, so here is the cost driver rate for material handling cost. In exam completely your choice, you can show cost driver rates separately, or you can just show in the main answer plan as well if you have plenty of space, okay, because you normally write in pens, okay, so you can accommodate this information within the answer plan as well, but here I need to explain and I'm writing slightly bigger as well so you can see it. That's why I'm showing it separately one by one. Material handling cost, please. 13,650 divided by number of materials handled for the year. So for X, Y and Z, we are given the materials 4, 6 and 3. These are square meters. 4 square meters for 1x, 6 square meters for 1y and 3 square meters for 1z. And there are 2,000 units of x in a year, 1,500 units of y in a year and 800 units for z in a year. And that will give me total number of materials to be handled in year 2014. 8,000 square meters, 9,000 square meters and 2,400. In total 19,400 square meters. That's the total of the cost driver. So here we go, 13,650 divided by 19,400, that comes to 0.70 approximately. 70 cents approximately per square meter, okay, per square meter. And here is linking this answer to the product X, Y and Z. So 0.7 times by, remember how many square meters in 1x? 4, 6 and 3 respectively. Okay, so 4 times 70 to 80, 4 times by 70 cents, 6 times by 70 cents, 420, and 3 times 70 cents is 210. And did you see the same principle? More the materials handled, more the overhead cost, less the materials handled, less the overhead cost. And that's building up a concept among us that it is a more appropriate or more fairer method of costing. Okay, not everything is by labor hours or machine hours, but based upon individual consumption of the cost drivers. Once this is done, all overheads have been evaluated. Now we just need to add materials with labor and then individual overheads, and we will get total cost per unit or full cost per unit, which we can quickly do it here. 5 plus 160 plus 252 plus 648 plus 2.8, that gives us 18.40. Second one is 3 plus 2, 67 plus 168, 324 and 420, 1479. And thirdly, 4 plus 6, 10, then plus 10, 06, then 216, and then 210, 2432. right? That gives us the activity based cost per unit, full cost per unit. Okay, now you can compare, the numbers will be slightly different, of course, because it's a different method of costing. As per absorption costing, we had 14, 10, 18, 17, 8, 28, 75, and using the ABC, numbers are slightly different. Okay, and that gives management another thinking point based upon this cost as per ABC, how they can improve the product profitability or product competitiveness. Somewhere where the cost is greater, they need to reduce the cost by controlling the drivers, and wherever the cost is low, they need to decrease the selling price to bring more profit margin or improve the sales demand. Okay, so make sure you can revise this session. Okay, you can watch it again and again, and every step you can watch me again, so that you can be more confident about this absorption and ABC. Okay, so thank you very much of your time and patience in listening to me. I will see you with some more work very soon. Okay, so please make sure you remind yourself with all the steps we have covered today. Watch again. Okay, and I'll be waiting for your feedback as well. Okay, any problems, give us a shout. Just make sure, read the study material, okay, study text and notes, watch this video, make sure, try to do the practice, try to do this example on your own pace, so that you can feel whether you have learned every step in absorption and ABC, or you need to do more work. Okay, all the very best. Take care. Goodbye.